It's time for a music video. Those of you who follow my channel will know from my preview of 2022 video that I was going to look into 1972, the 50th anniversary of albums released in that year. And I'm going to do, I think this is possibly my third. I lose count of the downloads and uploads these days. But this is a double act, 1972, two selections. The first of them is from the classic rock genre, All the Young Dudes by Mott The Hoople. And the second is a band called Renaissance and their album Prologue. And their genre is a little bit more difficult to put in. I would put them in a bit of folk prog with a tinge of classical jazz. I have to confess I don't know too much about Renaissance's music, and this was the first time I'd listened to this album. But anyway, we're going to have these two reviewed in this video, and there will be a little bit of lyric, and so let's get on with it. All the Young Dudes by Mott The Hoople. This album followed on from Brain Capers in 1971, and Mott decided to change producers. They got rid of Guy Stevens and they brought in the infamous David Bowie. It certainly made an impact. The band worked much harder. There was a tighter sound, and they had to do more than just spew out gig-like music. And there was a collection of songs that certainly were pretty impressive. In terms of personnel, the organ player Vernon Allen was less used on this set of songs, and there was also a number of covers, including Lou Reed's Sweet Jane, and of course the title track, which was a donation by the producer Mr. David Bowie. And this became a mega single. And then towards the end, Ready for Love, which was later made into a big hit by Bad Company. The common denominator, of course, being Mick Ralphs on guitar. I'm going to go through the tracks now with a few of my observations. And so let's get to it, shall we? So fifth album then from Mott The Hoople kicks off with Sweet Jane, written by Reed, and it's a pretty solid version of this song. Hunter does a pretty good job on vocals. He hasn't quite got the stunning impact that Reed had, but his vocals are still pretty throaty and impactful, and there's some nice guitar from Ralphs on it as well. Clocks in just over 4 minutes. An excellent start, it has to be said. To track two then, Mama's Little Jewel, reminded me of some of the intros on Hunky Dory, to be honest. And after a brief intro, it stops and Hunter sort of talks to Bowie, suggesting that they restart it again. That doesn't happen, I don't think, but it's just maybe for effect. And then they continue, and the rhythm is, well, very Bowie-esque. It's got a nice sort of rhythmic rock beat, and there's a little bit of glam on the periphery of it. There's a little bit of slide guitar that filters in, and some neat piano runs by Hunter, which hints at a sort of barroom atmosphere. Overall, a pretty nice, gentle sort of track to go with the excellent opener. Some very throaty horns on the outro as well. And so let's move on now. This segues immediately into the opening guitar run of the title track, All the Young Dudes, written, of course, by Bowie. Huge hit. Lifted Mott The Hoople from the sort of gig scene to a band to be noticed. It was a major breakthrough for them and a fantastic piece of music. I'm going to have a little look at the lyric. All the Young Dudes, very much a signature for the glam rock revolution and an absolutely essential listen, really, when it comes to anything connected with The Hoople, Ian Hunter, David Bowie, Roxy Music, and all those other glam rock stars of the 70s. So here goes with the lyric then. Well, Billy rapped all night about his suicide, how he'd kicked it in the head when he was 25. Speed jive, don't want to stay alive when you're 25. And Wendy's stealing clothes from Marks and Sparks. And Freddie's got spots from ripping off the stars from his face. Funky little boat race. Television man is crazy, saying we're juvenile delinquent wrecks. Oh man, I need TV when I got T-Rex. Oh brother, you guessed. I'm a dude, Dad. Chorus, all the young dudes, hey dudes, carry the news, where are you? Boogaloo dudes, stand up, come on, carry the news. All the young dudes, I want to hear you. Carry the news, I want to see you. Boogaloo dudes, I want to talk to you. All of you, carry the news now. Verse 2. Now Lucy looks sweet because he dresses like a queen, but he can kick like a mule. It's a real mean team. But we can love. Oh yes, we can love. And my brother's back at home with his Beatles and his Stones. We never got it off on that revolution stuff. What a drag. Too many snags. Now I've drunk a lot of wine and I'm feeling fine. Got to race some cat to bed. Oh, is that concrete all round? Oh, is it in my head? Yes, I'm a dude, Dad. And now to the outro. Hey, you there, all the young dudes with the glasses. Carry the news, I want you. Boogaloo dudes, I want you in the front. Carry the news, now. Now you're his friends, all the young dudes. Now you bring him down, 'cause I want him. Carry the news, ha ha ha. Boogaloo dudes, I want him right here. Bring him, come on, carry the news. Bring him, ha ha, here you go. All the young dudes, I wanted to do this for years. Carry the news, there you go. Boogaloo dudes, how did it feel? Carry the news. Wow, the lyrics. Bowie's fingerprints all over it. Example being too old at 25 to live in a cross-dressing bisexual world. Very much Bowie in the mid-70s, early 70s. The era, the role of the delinquents, and the introduction of escapism by dressing up. Glam rock, T-Rex style, and Mark Bolan. Absolutely brilliant, isn't it? And I hope my rendition of it was actually brought into your head the tune. Sucker is up next, bit of an anticlimax, but it got a sort of lazy, sleazy, sort of slow, almost bluesy feel to it. And you can catch some of the horns, and there is a credit for Bowie playing sax on the album. Not sure it's this one here. Hunter's in good form, slopping around on vocals, and it's got a sort of eerie phase as well. It's probably a touch too long, but it was recorded live at the Hammersmith Odeon. So maybe no Bowie. There's definitely a touch of horn in the studio version, credited to the writing, and it's credited to Rouse and Watts alongside Hunter. There is a sort of smoky sax work, and reading the lyric, it seems to be a very much about sex and how the male sort of abuses his partner, his girlfriend, but certainly uses her as well. And that would encapsulate perhaps why it's called Sucker. There's some metaphors littered around in this song. And so that's Sucker. Jerkin's Crocus is next. The lyric isn't up to much. It starts off and you think it's Brown Sugar. Follows a similar pattern. There's some decent enough guitar. It's very much a standard rock song. Hunter in his element. But you know it's tenor belly really. To be perfectly frank, and that seals out side one. On to side two then, one of the boys starts us off, and it's a rocker. It's got a fair amount of energy, and I must admit, very typical of the Hoople. Starts off quietly, and then once they turn on the drums and bass, we're into some slightly heavy rock guitar and raucous hunty vocals. It's all pretty middle of the road, but I like it, and the song has some Bowie sound effects. At the beginning and at the end of the track, there's a dialing tone. One at the end is more modern than the one at the beginning. Hunter rests his vocal cords for the next one, Soft Grounds. Vernon Allen, the keyboard player, taking lead vocals. And he doesn't really do a lot, to be honest. It's standard rock sound, brief, which is probably to your benefit. It really just clocking in at about 3 minutes 17. And that about sums it up. So too Ready for Love, with the Mick Ralphs on lead vocals. And as I say, when he left, he took this with him to Bad Company. They made a much more rockier version of it. This one's tidy enough, but the vocals are very weak. standard rock tune really, nothing in comparison really to the title track, which stands out on this album. But Bad Company's version, of course, was a big hit, and I think Paul Rodgers' vocal far too superior to Mick Ralph's vocal. We didn't really hear any of Ralph singing with Bad Company, and in many ways, although he wrote this song, he would have been better advised to give the vocal duty to Hunter, I think. Towards the back end, Ralph does open his shoulders a bit, and a strange mix really of the rhythm guitar melody seems to be higher in the mix than the lead guitar. So to an extent, the lead is lost a little. That's my observation anyway. But a tidy enough rock song. Sea Diver closes. It's a sort of ballad with Hunter commanding on piano and lead vocals. There's some brass arrangements with strings courtesy of Mick Ronson. Yeah, that guy. I wonder why he was brought in. Well, we know why, because his mate was in the production room. It's a very, very nice end to the album, it has to be said. Although overall, this album is really 3 tracks that stand out. The opener, the title track, and this one tapped on at the end. They were moving in the right direction, certainly, were Mott The Hoople, and this one jettisoned some well on that road. Let's see, I tried to decipher the Sea Diver words. Seemed to be about love that had turned a bit sour, and the need to escape the iron veil. Quite melancholic, really. But just as a point of correction, I had said earlier about some slide guitar on a track by Ronson, and Mama's Little Jewel it was. That wasn't correct. I read the WikiLeaks wrong. The slide guitar was on the bonus track, which I haven't covered on this review. No slide guitar on this Mummy's Little Jewel. So anyway, that's my audio review for all the young dudes. So to the second offering then, Prologue by Renaissance, again from 1972. Very symphonic rock, I felt. 6 tracks on the album. The title track opens, Kiev's track 2, Sound of the Sea is 3, Spare Some Love 4, Bound for Infinity is track 5, and then the lengthy Rajakhanah is the final track. This was the first album by the band in the 70s, Annie Hasman's Renaissance. More hard rock sounds with increasing psychedelia on this, with a little bit of a heavy guitar sound occasionally, which certainly wasn't on their pre-70 albums. The soaring vocals, however, from Annie remain. On Kiev, there's some piano, and this one was sang by another member of the band. Ethereal flowing, lyrical sounds to the sounds of the sea. That's most like their previous work. And Spare Some Love with prominent folky acoustic guitars. And so we're going to go through this and hit the tracks now. I've never heard this album before, so the fast-paced rhythm with the piano driving at the start, and then the harmonies come in. It sounds like it could be something that Fifth Dimension might recall, a sort of pop soul theme. And there's a spectacular high range shrill from Hasman, and then it goes into what only could be described as jazz prog rock with some excellent piano and a fierce drum bass combo. Really is ferocious, the pace as well as the beat, with almost a percussive samba Latin feel to it, and goes along those jazz tones midway through, before developing into sort of a classical Bach-like feel. That's Johann Sebastian, by the way. A bit reminiscent of what Jethro Tull and Anderson was doing, with a classical feel to prog. And then it rushes to the finish with some extreme surreal tones by Haslam. But a very impressive start to this album, it has to be said. Right, so to the lineup, there will be a slide. Of course, Annie Haslam's singer and the keyboard player is John Toot. John Camp plays bass, Terry Sullivan is on drums, and the guitarist Mike Parsons. Unfortunately, Parsons had a tragic car accident, and so Rob Hendry had to step in to do most of the recordings in July '72. And so a bit of a radical change for them, really. The songs were originals, but none of the players actually wrote the songs. Former members Jim McCarthy from the first lineup and Michael Dunford, who played with the national teams, were responsible for the writing. And this transitional lineup also had Betty Thatcher as a lyricist, and she was put together the track list. Band's third album, second track then Kiev. Very pleasant indeed. A lot of classical overtones I felt, and I'm enjoying this album. The vocals by John Camp, stepping in for Haslam here, who usually dominates on vocals. Production was handled by one Miles Copeland. Track Flea, Haslam's soaring high tones add some atmosphere to a piano, and the sound of seagulls. Yes, we certainly are at the seaside. It's very atmospheric and very pleasant. And we get about 5 minutes of this. It's all very pretty, conjures up these images of being by the sea. And then the piano slowly fades out with Aslam's lyrics. Soaring voice again, slowly getting quieter and quieter. Nice production in the engineer room. Next up is Spare Some Love, similar sort of pattern, skippy rhythms, nice gentle piano that chimes a bit, and Haslam's vocals. They're pretty to say the least. And then there's the bridge, which leads to a little bit more complex sort of jazz influences. But it is getting a little samey, very much a sort of choral feel to the enchanting voicing, particularly when she's got some of the harmonies behind her. But as I say, pretty samey. Now we're moving on to the next track, which is called Bound for Infinity. Relatively short, just 4 minutes. More classically influenced piano and beautifully played, it has to be said. Lovely vocal presentation. It's pretty faultless, but it just doesn't move me that much. Becoming very predictable, I must admit. Anyway, let's see what the last track beckons. This has definitely got elements of Eastern Raga. It's called Rajakhanah, and after a lengthy sort of prog style intro, we then get the rhythm. And I thought I heard a tinge of sitar, and then Haslam starts wailing like she's in some religious theatre, possibly a mosque or a synagogue, or probably a Hindu temple. But it's certainly got elements of that. A pleasant few minutes in, and when we get the synthesised solo by one Francis Monkman, a name that ringed a bell with me. I think he was with Curved Air, a band I saw a few times. I wouldn't swear to that, however, but he was a proficient keyboard man, and he plays on this track. That is a fact. He indulges himself with a lengthy solo, and we approach the finale. The last couple of minutes are another period of wailing progressive Eastern flavour. And then they jump into a piano lead, a sort of frantic ELP style progressive feel, which helps them on their way. It's amazing how this style of music 50 years ago really caught my ear. I used to prick up instantly and be raptured by the pleasant playing. In fact, brilliant playing. I wallowed in this sort of self-indulgent stuff. Now, however, it leaves me relatively cold and emotionless. And then we get that final push on the Eastern Raja returns. And then we say a big good night. This is obviously a quality piece of work. Renaissance, a very talented band instrumentally with an excellent lead vocalist. But unfortunately for me, it quickly becomes background music. Sorry to any Renaissance fans out there, maybe repeated listens, but I get a feeling that this sort of music pass me by. Anyway, that concludes my double act for 1972. All the Young Dudes by Mott The Hoople and Prologue by Renaissance.